Welcome to Season 2 of the PerpCast. I'm your host, Ray, the social media and PR manager of Perp Games, and we've created this podcast to further show our support to the wider games and virtual reality industry. It's a new year and it's a new start for the PerpCast as we enter Season 2 of this show, where we chat to people in VR about their life and their work. Last season on the show, we had the likes of Marty O'Donnell, Anna Ribeiro, Linnea Harrison, and PSVR Without Parole. And with 2020, we've got so many exciting things on the horizon. And just before I start this show, I just want to chat a little bit about the Peace on Earth campaign that we had in December. We just want to say a big thank you to everyone who got involved with that. It was really exciting. It was the best things that we've ever done. I loved being a part of it, and I loved seeing the reaction from you and everyone else. I hope you stick around with us on the channel. We have got some really cool things coming we can't talk about just yet, but when you do, you'll love it. And that really sort of directs us straight to Jaime, who's going to be our guest from Nusakan Studios, who are working on the just released Taurus VR in Steam Early Access. Thanks so much for joining us, Jaime. How's it going?
Thanks for inviting me. Thank you so much. I'm really glad to be here. All cool, really. I mean, to be honest, after the early access release, that's, after the big crunch, you feel really tired and in a sort of happy bubble,
yeah.
hoping to basically jump into big bucket of coffee and swim around, for like an hour or two, see if I wake up.
That's a good.
Apart from that, everything is awesome.
Everything is awesome, like the Lego movie, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's awesome. And obviously, you were a big part of the Peace on Earth campaign as well, and we just want to say thank you to getting involved with that. I mean, how did you find that for the studio? What were your feelings about the Peace on Earth campaign?
Well, I mean, this sort of marketing movement is really important. There should be more of those. I think now VR needs as much exposure as possible. And the beautiful thing about it is you have that sort of sharing, sort of generous feeling between different studios in which, I let you my space in the social channels, you let me your space, and, together, we make things better for everyone. So I think it was a very, very clever move.
I'm really glad to hear that. I'm glad that you found it mutually beneficial. And as you say, it's absolutely so important for us to be celebrating each other, of a new generation on the horizon and so many more exciting things to come. It's never been a more important time for VR to kind of get itself in the limelight and the spotlight. And, I think developers have such an important role to help each other and, keep the ecosystem going. So I'm really glad you benefited and enjoyed that.
That's right.
So on today's show, we're going to be talking all about Taurus VR. We're going to be talking a bit about Jaime's career and so much more. And so I guess we're just going to sort of dive straight into the questions here. So first of all, obviously, this is such a big release for you and your studio. But sort of tell us a bit about yourself and your journey to making Taurus VR and what's your experience in the games industry?
Well, my background is quite varied, and obviously the older you get, the more varied it can get. But I was 17 years before this in the advertising industry as an art director, even creative director, at a global level. Like I moved around a lot, mainly in London, but also LA, New York, Amsterdam. So, and I did well, I kind of won a few awards, but, I think I wanted to do more, I wanted to do more with my creative thinking than, selling all other people's products, and I always felt like I always was quite adaptable, and you can use your empathy and creativity for anything really. So I decided to put myself in a new goal, which was, becoming the best possible creative director of VR, AR that I could be.
Awesome.
So I always love a new challenge.
Yeah.
But I guess for that, I didn't want to just to be on the creative side, I think to enter into a field like this, which is so technical, you cannot just stay in the creative side. So first I did an main concept art because I was a bit good at that side. And then I did an engineering degree in VR and MR. So that gave me sort of the other side and, became the creative that knows a lot from the sort of development point of view and the development process, which is something that, I think that's the bit that I had lacking basically.
And yeah, I suppose you're talking a bit about the working in VR there and the kind of like the early days of that. I mean, what sort of courses were available to you and what sort of learning experiences were available for you to work in VR before obviously the technology was more widely available to people?
I guess I feel really lucky that I got into a point in which there was already in Madrid like a course, sort of like a post-college degree in VR and AR. So in that way, I think I was very lucky that I got in the right spot and got a knowledge from professionals that they were already happy to share the sort of the first wave of experiences that they had in VR, which I think some of them were atrocious. So many studios actually fell. Everything was sort of more, let's see what happens. And I think this second wave that we're having on VR is way more stable. The knowledge is a little bit more available everywhere if you look through. And the sort of engines like Unreal and Unity that put, packages together to get you started are actually available for everyone at a very good price. So if you really have the time and the will for it, I think there's a lot you can do very quickly. It's obviously a very specialized environment, so it doesn't come easy, but it's so rewarding that I would say it's definitely worth doing.
It's really interesting to learn more about that side of things because it seemed like to I guess from an outsider looking in that VR just sort of appeared on the scene, but obviously there was so much happening in the background prior to the release of the first major headsets, and it's really interesting to see as a developer how you made that natural transition from just sort of standard flat screen games and then develop these massive expansive 3D worlds which you can really immerse yourself in. So it's really interesting to get some insight into that. I mean, what is it, do you think about your game that makes it a fit for VR more than just a standard flat screen game? And what is it about VR that as a medium makes you want to work on it?
I can tell you a little bit about the mechanics if you want. And, coming back about what I was saying before that, it could only live in VR. So the game is actually, you can use... It's a mix of both mechanics. That's a sort of innovative thing. It's first person and third person at the same time. So the ship actually appears right in front of you and you move it to your body left and right within a rail. So like a never-ending rail. And then basically you can jump, you can dodge, but you always move the spaceship with your body. And then the actual guns, they actually appear in your hands because that felt really immersive. They actually point at where you want to shoot, and there are two little drones, two fellows left and right that you can sort of they do different things. They can become shields for you, or they can shoot different type of ammunitions and they shoot where you point. So it has that kind of feeling of turret or sort of helicopter in a way some people has compared it to. And that also actually creates out a lot of problems that VR has been having until now, which is a sort of motion sickness, because the spaceship is right in front of you. That, because the spaceship is all the time moving, you have that feeling of Galaga, that basically that sort of level that keeps moving on and on as the waves of enemy keep coming at you, and you just shoot them and destroy them forever.
Yeah, and I suppose like when you're creating a world and a spaceship, and obviously there is within Taurus VR there are different ships and there are different environments to explore, and there's all that balancing to get right. So what kind of goes into creating the different worlds and the spaceships in the game, and how difficult is it to get the balancing right between the different ships and the enemy types?
Yeah, I would say probably testing. It's just I guess from the beginning, from the prototype, we decided that unless the actual movement of the spaceship felt like sweet and comfortable, we would just not carry on. So we actually, the first spaceship was the sort of key for us to make sure that the game actually works. You had to really enjoy moving the spaceship around. That sort of wavy feel left and right, so getting yourself lost in the movement. Eventually, you could become better and better into the game, and you realize that you're sort of like a really badass and jumping, moving left and right, and this, destroying wave after wave of enemy. You enter to the flow feeling, So I think that's sort of where we wanted to get to. And then after that, it's just a matter of, what sort of experience you want. We wanted to personalize. Some people may want to be more, in a way, like a sniper rifle, being very precise, but, not have so much of a shield. We started, I guess, getting stereotypes of other games and trying to translate those stereotypes into each spaceship, so each spaceship had its own little personality.
Yeah, and I suppose because you obviously at the moment you're in early access, and so you're not the full release isn't there, so people haven't had the full spectrum of what Taurus VR can offer players. Obviously that's all to come. Tell us a bit about where Taurus VR is at the moment. What type of game it is, what ultimately is the aim of it, and why do you think it is going to be appealing to retro gamers and indeed people who have VR headsets and just want to try something different?
As our tagline says, it's retro reimagined for VR. We just want to, really tag into this short burst of adrenaline in which, every day you just jump into the game, move around, shoot everything you've got in your way, and, come out of it saying, wow, that was amazing. Obviously, it's a fairly active game, so that might surprise to some people, but that's what makes it actually really VR. And then obviously, we just want to get into that sort of nostalgic vibe that the game used to have. Games like Galaga that used to have a long time ago.
And I suppose that's an interesting point because you're saying it's a very active game, and there does seem to be an interesting trend at the moment with VR of people using kind of fitness apps like Box VR for boxercise, and Creed obviously is another boxing game, and it's very active, intensive games that people have actually said have helped them with weight loss and a part of a balanced diet. And obviously I don't know whether or not that really sort of came into your thinking when you were making the game, but do you what kind of, I imagine it's quite an intense workout at times, right?
Well, it definitely, you may sweat a little bit. You're not going to have a proper run with it, but it will definitely make you move around and dodge it. It really depends actually how you play it as well. I personally am the active type, so I love really jumping and lowering down and then just doing squats and pointing and everything. And I really get into that. I've got other friends that they call it more like the Velociraptor type, in which you just point with your both hands together next to your body and just make sure that every shot actually is in place. With that type of game, you will move a little bit less, but you have to be an awesome shooter and obviously have the right ammunition and the right spaceship for it. So I think you can tailor it, but I will say in the general terms, it's a fairly active game and you may sweat a little bit.
So be prepared.
Yeah.
And I suppose at the moment, as we've mentioned briefly, the game is in early access at the moment, so it's not officially finally released. But tell us why you felt early access was the right model for Taurus VR, and what kind of benefits do you think it gives you as a creator?
For us, we definitely wanted the community involved, as we had a lot of content coming through, even if the core game is already there. We already are offering a fair bit for an early access, which is 5 spaceships, 4 worlds, and you have the sort of scoring system is already all there. So you're going to have quite a bit of time playing with it. And then you're going to have 4 waves of content coming sort of every month and a half, which we're going to have a lot more spaceships. We're going to have around 9 at the end, and you're going to have a full new world. You're going to have also the different modes, like for example, the Infinity mode, which is going to be great, and also the boss modes. If the earlier you join in, obviously the better deal is going to be for you. We also have content, for example, for this time around, we're gonna have Pioneer's Badge, which is just like a little thank you, little symbol in the game that you will get on straight away. Then you're gonna be able to name the 5th world. If you actually are, a committed gamer, committed pilot, you're gonna have that 5th world to, have a chance to name it. And then the sort of really cool one is that if you finish the game within the time period in which is before the first update, you're gonna have the alien spaceships, which we really like. To be honest, it's my favorite. It's brutal. So I hope everybody gets it, because it will be a shame that if you are like an early access player and you don't get it. So just go for it and kill those aliens, please.
Make sure you unlock it, because it seems like a real beast. It's got some nice differences compared to other ships as well. So it's not just a cosmetic appearance. It's a very different type of ship from everything else. So do make sure you take the time to unlock that if you've got the game. And that sort of links me to, as we've mentioned, you are in early access, and obviously that means you're having more of a direct communication with your fan base, perhaps than other games that release, because because you're listening to feedback more intensely and you're tailoring the experience to that. And I suppose what kind of feedback have you had so far on Taurus? Obviously, I know the game has only just launched, but I know you've had some reviews and I know there's been some press attention. So, in your experience, what has been the feedback been like so far for the game?
Yeah, so far it's been very positive, to be honest. What I'm more surprised about is that the comments in Steam, it was exactly what we wanted the players to feel, to think what was the game about. So some people surprised of how well the mechanics work and that there are no motion sickness. And some of them, they say that they were not expecting that it would be so active. So that's why I'm saying that the game is actually active. You can play sit down, but you may need something like a 3D Doodle, which is a really cool device that you can put in your feet. It's almost like a platform that you will be able to use the spaceship with a 3D Doodle. But otherwise, you definitely have to stand out and move around and earn those points, really, with your sweat.
Actually, you mentioned a very interesting point there about the 3D rudder, because we haven't talked much about that yet. So obviously, 3D rudder have been supporting a lot of games in the industry at the moment, and it's been announced that you're working with 3D rudder on Taurus. And I suppose for those who have yet to experience 3D rudder, what can you say about how different the control scheme feels? Does it feel more naturally to how you originally envisaged it? Is it a really different way to play it?
I mean, it certainly feels different, but we loved it so much. Like, we wouldn't have done this unless we thought it was really fun to play with 3D Doodle. But the feeling that you had, it was one of those arcades that you go and you used to go and still go to those shops, arcade machines, and just we had that feeling, that actually it really makes you feel still that kind of arcade feeling. You still have it. It's just basically, it's more that spaceship. It adds to the feeling of being inside a spaceship. Because of that, and because it was actually really fun to play with the 3D Doodle, we had to say yes and implement it. We were really happy that they were up for it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have been surprised by how much a 3D rudder has added to their experience and how much they've enjoyed games and different ways to play it. And I can imagine from my experience with Taurus, I can imagine that it fits really, really well. It does seem like a very natural pairing for the two games because of how much moving and motion there is involved with it. And from that point on, because obviously I know you're still adding things into the game, and I know there are still things that you're tweaking and rebalancing. What kind of key feature are you most looking forward to people playing? Is it something that's in the game at the moment, or is it something that's coming up soon?
Yeah, we've got coming up soon. Yeah, definitely. And I would say for me, the infinity mode, I think, is great because it really adds a lot to the game. The mechanic in which you just basically move around a big track, and you can keep scoring, keep making points, but you can sort of save them by sort of stopping by certain points and bank. Or you can just keep going and maybe lose them all. So it has like that kind of lovely extra risky feeling that you get.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to get a lot of people hooked into this. If you really want to make points, and you're going to have a lot of fun with the infinity modes. And we hope we can add as many of them as possible. Personally as well, the big boss battles, I think there's not a retro game without, those big massive balls that, you were scared and you were like really sort of scared of it, but really looking forward to fight against. So we've got those in development, and I can't wait to show you more. Really, I think we will put in Discord some of the concepts and some of the developments there. For the next bosses that may come, we'll hopefully ask the community, see what they think about the look, see how they think about the mechanic, and get them involved into those big bosses. Give them the chance to shape them, basically. And lastly, basically the season levels, which this is sort of what we're saying, that we want to give a lot for the bugs to for the players, which is basically every now and then we're going to add a new track, which will be specific to a certain theme of, that way give more value to the players, so for never-ending fun killing and squishing aliens.
And I suppose you've touched upon it there briefly with people actually getting involved from a community standpoint and shaping the game. And with more gamers, I feel like wanting to have their voices heard, and people like they really want to have an active involvement in development in some way and feel like they're contributing to the game. I mean, for you, Is early access the best way to do that? Do you find that you have more interaction from other mediums? I mean, how are you getting most of your feedback, and how is that affecting development of Taurus?
Yeah, I think when you start on early access and the first players come in, you know they're gonna be quality players. That they are, they really want to get involved, and they always seem more vocal. And because of that, they need to be rewarded. They're liking and they're giving their time to you to say what they think. They know that we want to put a lot into the game, and we want it to be as good for everyone as it can be. So in that way, it can only be good to start early access and get everybody involved. The earlier, the better. Definitely.
Yeah. And I suppose I know you've mentioned you've had some previous experience with games prior to working at Nusakan and working on Taurus. I suppose from you, I don't know whether or not you worked on early access games previously or this is your first time, but what have you learned as a creator working on an early access title? What do you think are the differences compared to if you just decided to launch Taurus this month as a finished product?
Well, it starts from a point of honesty, in which we do have a core game. The core game works really well, and we already have plenty of content to go with it. And the important thing is that it needs to be really solid. So an early access game needs to be solid from the beginning. I think that's I would say that's the key point. Basically, then we had so much in the pipeline and already things worked out, and then we knew they were going to come through. It doesn't feel fair, to just launch and then maybe charge with a DLC. It just felt that basically the right thing was, because we were still shaping it up, all this content coming to reward everyone for getting involved and making Taurus a little bit more famous, and just making a participation for everyone. So it feels right. It feels right to do early access when it's done this way.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think some people use early access for the wrong means. I think you're going about it the right way. You're gradually introducing people to the content, and once the content has been finalized, then you're happy to release it in a final state. So I think that is the stages in the process. I think people are living the development journey with you through the game at the moment. They're seeing the different stages and the way you're implementing things and finalizing things, and at the same time you're getting that invaluable feedback that helps you create the game to be the best possible game that it can be. So that's definitely the way forward. And I suppose for you, and because obviously you are introducing new things into Taurus all the time now, and the game is coming in stages. What do you think has been your favorite part developing the game so far?
Well, because I'm sort of from the artist side, I would say the boss. This first boss has been really, really fun to play with and conceptualize. I can't wait to actually show people. I'm just thinking about it. I would say actually the boss battles and the next one further on that they're gonna come. We hope they're gonna feel really epic. Is something that I'm also using programs like Quill and Oculus Medium. So it feels very natural to actually use as an artist those softwares that allow me to sort of play around, like the cluster scene, and just feel free, but also within the environment where the actual final piece is gonna be. I'm hoping I'll be able to share those with the community as well. So yeah, definitely if I had to choose one, obviously I would say the boss battle.
Yeah, and I think that because that's quite personal to you as well, so it makes sense from your point of view. That would be one of the best things, the most interesting things for you to develop, and the things that you enjoy the most working on. Yeah, I suppose that as we've mentioned, obviously you're adding to the game, and there's updates going to be coming to Taurus all the time until it's finally released. What kind of content is coming to Taurus, and can you give us a sneak peek of what's coming up in the next few updates?
We sort of touched on them before, but for me, basically we have 4 tiers until summer 2020, and the fears basically what we're gonna add is the infinity mode, the big bosses, season maps, new spaceships, which we hope to be 9, but that's sort of our aim. So you're gonna have plenty of personalities. It will have a ship for each personality we have. We're also gonna have the spaceship hacks. That's something we didn't talk about, which means basically you're gonna make it even more personal. You're gonna be able to touch of how that ship behaves. We're gonna have one new world. We have to remember actually that each world, even if there's 4 of them right now, each world has 3 tracks, and they also one of them is actually secret, so you have to sort of fight a little bit more to find that one. You're also gonna have 3 levels of difficulty. So if you zoom up with that, there's already a lot of content there. So we're going to have a fifth world after those 4 worlds. And we want to add more modes that we are testing, but we cannot really talk about them just yet because my team will kill me. I wonder if I'm talking too much already. But definitely, the Infinity mode's definitely coming, and there's more stuff. Obviously, the more success we find in the game, the more content we will keep adding. And with the season level, that sort of shows our commitment to never end the content. That's sort of what the players want.
That makes sense. And I suppose that you've got all these exciting developments coming up, and that there are people who are going to be very interested. There's some people who've probably already finished what's already there, and they're eagerly anticipating the next batch of content as gamers can fly through these things so quickly. But when obviously you've got an end date that you're working towards, and can you give us a sort of a rough time frame of when you expect Taurus VR to leave early access, and when it does leave early access at that time, what formats will it be releasing on?
Yeah, so it will be summer 2020, which it feels far away right now, but it's actually around the corner, as you know.
Yeah, it really is.
It's like, oh my God, it's just there. So, but it's definitely for Steam for sure. We have in the pipeline the usual suspects, but obviously, we don't want to talk about it until we sign the dotted line and everything happens. But ideally, the more formats, the better. So I think that's the best way we can say it. We really hope to be everywhere, really, so everybody can enjoy the game.
Stay tuned, because you never know.
Yeah.
And obviously, we sort of a last question before we go to the fan questions. So we had a few of those to get through. Obviously, we've mentioned that you are gradually adding to the game before the summer window happens, and you've announced that you've got some content coming there. But in your mind, have you got any plans to extend the game beyond that summer window with any future DLC or something similar to that?
Yeah, I think the closest thing we know for certain is going to happen is the season levels. So we will have different occasions throughout the year in which we want to add a level based on whatever theme we see fit, or the players in the community see, may be able to vote on that. Apart from that, sky's the limit, because obviously we love our job. We hope to make a living out of that. So the more people play, the more work we can keep working on it, and we will add even more. So really, apart from the season levels, there's it could be anything. It's just the game needs to do well to keep adding more.
It's certainly a game that lends itself to regular updates and additional updates over time, doesn't it? So it's something that if you wanted to add to it, or if there was a demand for it, it would be something that there's opportunities there to do more with the game, definitely.
Yeah, I think that because obviously we love gaming, we love VR, we love our game. So as long as there's a demand for it, we are a small team, so we are able to really fulfill that and just do it, no matter what.
Yeah. Well, it's been really great chatting to you about that, Jamie. And I know we've got some fan questions as well. One question I know has been asked very, very regularly by many, many people. So we'll allow you to answer that directly on here. Before we do that, though, we've had a question from, it's 2 people have asked a similar question. So it was That Guy Is Will and Jamie K on Twitter. They asked, what is your inspiration for the game? I know we've talked a bit about this already. And what other games have inspired you to make Taurus VR? So we've mentioned how important Galaga is to Taurus VR, but are there any other games who you feel have inspired the game as it is? Yeah,
I would say Space Invader, and also a little bit Afterburner in the sort of mechanics that shooting mechanics that Afterburner had. But I would say all the retro spaceship games, we looked through all of them really, and just Galaga is the one that sort of we thought we should mention more. But I would say retro spaceship, everyone, over there in that theme. And I guess Afterburner actually was something that we got inspired from.
Yeah, and I suppose that's quite an interesting thing, because obviously Galaga is a flat screen game. The mechanics are they're simple, they work for that game, but there are things that have been evolved and perhaps are tweaked more to modern audiences that would prefer, because there's more use of buttons, controllers have wider schemes, there's more opportunities there. And I suppose you need to, I guess, have a wide range of inspirations to make a game like Taurus VR. That's something that's very active, something that, there's a more a 3D world there. So you couldn't just base everything on Galaga. You had to look at a wide range of inspirations to get the finished product, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously, there was an evolution in the process. So everything starts with a prototype, and then sort of that keeps changing and evolving, and you keep searching around everywhere to something that tickles your brain and your team's brain, okay, let's try this. Let's add a bit of that. But obviously the mechanics are innovative because, it's purely, ready for VR.
Definitely. So we got another question here from Petri Spack on Facebook. He's asked what the differences developing for different formats are. How difficult is it developing a game on VR compared to if you just decided to make Taurus a flat screen game? I know we sort of briefly touched upon this before, but what are the different challenges of the different headsets? Like obviously you've got an Oculus Rift, you've got this Valve Index, there's all these different types of headsets. And do you notice different challenges working on different headsets?
Well, I guess the first thing is I would say VR is easy to start with, because obviously there are like templates already in the different engines that, help you to go through. So I would say it's going to be easy to at least give it a try. But then obviously later on, getting better at it that's the hardest thing, to optimize basically. There's never enough basically optimization with VR. And that is sort of key, and the difference between the sort of professional studios and maybe not so professional, they basically the optimizing is always learning curve. But in that sense, I don't think you can actually specialize in VR and 2D at the same time, because you have to get really good at VR to, I guess I can only explain it in a way. If you opened a blueprint in Unreal for movement or teleporting in VR, is completely different, and it's like way more complex than teleporting if you see the blueprint in 2D or 3D game, so because there's so much more to take into account, there's possibilities of you moving around. They are much wider, so worth checking that out if you're curious about that blueprint of teleporting. It has nothing to do one with the other. So I would say if you want to ever do VR games, really focus your energy into being really good at VR. I think that's the best bet. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, it's definitely a trickier process than I think there's more widely available tools perhaps to make a flat screen game than a VR game. I think there's more involved in learning how to make those types of games, and it's a trickier process. And do you find the development time is probably longer, or do you think it's about the same roughly in your experience?
I guess it depends on the project. Yeah, I would say in our case, because we started quite slow and we had a learning curve, but then once we had it, the mechanics in the sweet spot, it was way quicker. So I guess each project is his own beast.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can imagine that. And so I suppose the final question is a very common question that you've received about Taurus VR, but we're going to ask it, so we'll give you a chance to address that. Paul Hibbard on Twitter asks, is there a chance that Taurus VR will be released for PlayStation VR?
If that happens, it will be a really good sign, so we really hope so. Yeah, we can't wait to do that. But obviously one thing at a time, we need a little bit of like a good track record in the other platforms, or to be able to enter one door leads to another, so we really hope we do. That's the best I can say right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the priority for you at the moment is to get early access completed, bring it to the headsets that it's already been announced for, and then from there, who knows what the future holds, right?
Yeah, all right.
Well, that is going to do it for today's show. Thank you so much for tuning in. Sorry, it's been a bit of a delay between PerpCast, but it's great to bring it back and introduce season 2 of this edition of the PerpCast. A massive thank you to Jamie for joining us here today. I know you've got so much going on with building Taurus VR. I know it's really busy times for you in the studio, and you've got updates to come, and you're obviously dealing with all the feedback. So it's really, really appreciated you've taken the time to come and see us, and we just want to give you the opportunity now to let everyone know where they can find you and Nusakan Studios, and anything else you may want to share with the audiences at this time.
Well, I guess the first thing that they could do is search Taurus VR in Steam, and from there you can join our Discord channel. And obviously, if you play the game, it's super important if you could give us like a quick review in Steam, because that's sort of that's essential for us right now. Otherwise you can stay tuned in Twitter at Nusakan Studio. But yeah, definitely start with searching the game in Steam.
Yeah, absolutely. The review scheme on Steam is so important for early access games. It helps in so many different ways.
Yeah, I also wanted to say that we're here for the long term. That's what we're trying to say with the early access and farther on. So I guess we're not gonna drop the game quickly. We're gonna give it as much love as possible. I think that's our work there.
Definitely. And I think that's so important. That's so encouraging for audiences as well to know that the studio there and available, they're willing to listen and they're always willing to support the game as well. And I think that's such an important relationship to have with community. So yeah, thank you again to Jaime, and it was great to chat with you.
Thank you for having me.
If you want any of your questions answered in the future show, then reply into the comment section below or send us a message on your preferred social platform and we'll always do our best to answer them. And you can even win yourself some goodies. Those who ask questions in today's show will receive a copy of Taurus VR in early access, so congratulations to you. We'll be in touch after the show. What would you like to see in future PerpCasts? Sound up below in the comment sections. We're always looking to make this a show that's informative and as interesting to you as possible. You can find Perp Games on Facebook, tweet us at Perp Games, subscribe on YouTube using the link in the description below. You can also find us on Discord, Instagram, LinkedIn, and get all the latest news on our products on perpgames.com. Thank you very much for listening to us again, and we'll see you next time.